It's time to invest with intent on the Welka Wealth Podcast. Join Tiffany Welka each week as she gives you guidance to align your faith, morals, and goals to make your financial plan a true success.
Thanks for listening to the Welka Wealth Podcast. I'm your host, Tiffany Welka. Today I wanted to talk about what women should really know when planning for their retirement. There are 5 specific challenges that I wanted to highlight here today. But before we dig into that, what I would love for you to ask yourself is, what does retirement actually mean for you? If you haven't thought about this question already, take a minute and really think about what retirement looks like. What does it feel like in your mind? Truly try to picture it. There are several questions that you should ask yourself. Thinking about where and how you want to spend your time is a great place to start. Where do you want to live? Have you shared your plans with anybody else? How long will you be retired? How will you stay busy during that time? What do you want to do in the retirement stage of your life? And the hardest question of all is, what actually makes you happy? What actually makes you happy? It's important to have a long-term focus on that so you can improve your chances of having the dream retirement that you deserve to have and that you've been thinking about all the working years of your life. I mean, think about it. What do you see yourself doing? Will you be working still, or will you be putting that part of your life away for good? Guess what, though? Most retirees are working in retirement. In fact, most of today's workers expect to work for pay in retirement. They expect that. Traditional retirements involving direct transitions from full-time work to no work are no longer the norm. This isn't your father's retirement experience anymore. You might plan to work longer in your current job, embark on a new career, work part-time, or even find a job that you've always dreamed of having, but couldn't in your pre-retirement years. Be realistic when you're coming up with these goals. The ability to work in retirement depends a great deal on your health. And it's difficult to predict what health issues you might have in the future. So if working longer is your only solution to reaching your retirement goals, you may want to think about other options. And we'll talk about that in just a little bit. We have important choices to make. Some of us will spend our working years in careers or jobs outside of the home. Some may work for a few years while others leave the workforce to raise kids and then come back to work. Still, others may never work outside of the home. Women have transformed the workplace and paved the way for the most educated, highest achieving generation of females ever. The past several decades have been marked by significant changes, and there are more women enrolled in college than men right now. That includes many who are going back after being in the workforce. But while many women have more economic opportunities than ever before, they also have more financial responsibility. One of the biggest challenges that we women face is balancing the many parts of our lives and trying to juggle every single thing that we have going on. Working women are especially prone to feeling that there isn't enough time in a day to get everything done. And of course, that's where we have to lean on God. Without Him, nothing is possible. But we can't help but have that feeling sometimes that there just isn't enough time to get anything done. There's a good chance that you take on way more than you can handle. And for many women, this happens every single day, and something has to give. What usually ends up giving? For us, well, for me anyway, it's self-care. That's the first thing that gets tossed out in the name of productivity. We've got work. You may have children or grandchildren or spouse, a partner, parents, financial concerns, health concerns, and all of these things we are trying to juggle. And self care seems to be the first thing that gets tossed out. It can be a big challenge to balance all of these responsibilities that go along with raising a family and managing a career. In addition to having to care for children, our parents are living longer than any previous generation before them. Many women are now having to deal with the added burden of caring for their aging parents, which can add more complications to an already complicated challenge. Half of older Americans expect to support aging parents and adult children at the same time. We call this the sandwich generation, and the sandwich generation woman is typically around the age of 48 years old. That's when they end up having to have more responsibility in regards to their parents, and at the same time, they're trying to raise their own family. Women tend to leave the workforce at an average of 12 years to care for children or parents. So while we may have to take time away from work, in the long term, that affects us in the retirement stages of our lives because now we didn't put in credits for Social Security, we didn't contribute to retirement accounts, and we didn't have an income stream at that point in time. So that these are big challenges that we face as women. And when we're planning for retirement, these are things that we have to consider. There's been so many studies done that have found that women worry more than men do about outliving their retirement savings. So we're living a lot longer now. And that worry is based on several realities that make it more difficult for women to adequately save for retirement. Although women in many households are the breadwinners, most still earn less than their husbands do and have spent fewer years in the workforce or at some point worked part time because they took time off to care for their children or parents. They work fewer years, so they have less money saved up. And because Social Security and other retirement benefits are tied to earnings, they end up with less retirement savings. Working women like myself are also less likely to have an employer sponsored pension plan. Pensions have decreased exponentially in the last 10 years. Many businesses and corporations used to offer pensions to their employees, but the amount of companies that offer pensions right now are significantly decreased. Since women typically have longer lifespans, that means that our healthcare costs may be higher and we're more likely to need long-term care. So before I move on, I'd like to take a minute and ask you a question. What do you think the average annual amount for a 65-year-old woman is that they would receive from Social Security? What's the average annual amount that a 65-year-old woman receives from Social Security? The answer is $12,520. That's it. $12,520 for the year, compared to almost $17,000 for men 65 and older. Is that going to be enough for us to live on in retirement? I surely do not think so. Women rely more heavily than men on income from Social Security, and nearly 3 in 10 women provide depend on Social Security as their most important source of income in their retirement stages of their life. 3 in 10 women depend on their Social Security to cover their lifestyle and their expenses. That's a very sad statistic to me. And despite Social Security, women remain at greater risk of poverty than men. 2.9 million retired women are living in poverty. Although Social Security plays an important role in providing us with some economic security, these numbers send a strong message about the importance of saving more on our own, saving our own money to make sure that we're able to meet our personal retirement goals. Most American workers haven't actually sufficiently saved for retirement. Let's look at the proof. Most working women believe that they'll need $250,000 when they retire. $250,000. That's how much they believe that they need to have saved up when they retire. But the majority of Americans have saved much less than that. The average retired woman has only saved $25,000. $25,000. And 62% of women believe that we could save $25 a week more than what we're already saving. So if you haven't started saving for retirement, the time is now. The first thing that is important for all of you to recognize is that risks are out there and they're going to happen, especially in the retirement stages of your life. But what risks are you going to be facing in retirement? For anyone who's still working and approaching retirement, or anybody who's retired, or maybe you even previously retired but then started working again, whether it's full-time or part-time, it doesn't matter, because interestingly enough, regardless of which group you fall into, there are certain risks that we all face going forward into the future. And unfortunately, they're only amplified the longer that we live. So, what exactly are the major risks that we face? Market risk, that's a major risk. I'm sure the vast majority of you have had money invested in the market, whether it's self-managed or through an advisor or a broker or a professional money manager. Obviously, we know that if the market drops, we have the risk of losing a substantial portion of our retirement assets if they are invested in the market. And there are safe investments, so if that's a risk that you like to cover, that's something that you can definitely do. There's insurance products out there that guarantee your retirement income stream. But let's talk about tax risk. Our country is approximately $25 trillion in debt and counting. $25 trillion. And I don't want to get political here, but I don't foresee long-term circumstances in which taxes are likely to be lower than they are today. If we want to pay off that debt, I believe taxes may increase in the future. So if you're like me and you think that taxes may increase in the future, there are items and policies and products and investments that you can use now to make sure that the taxable liability to you in retirement will be much less. now you also have inflation. The cost of goods rises each year. I think when I first started driving and I purchased a gallon of gas, it was 99 cents. And now I believe it was over $2. So as you can see, the cost of goods rises every single year. And when you're planning for retirement, you have to be able to at least withdraw what the inflation rate is just to keep up with inflation. So, what I love for all of you to do after you listen to my podcast today is check on your retirement accounts and see if they're earning at least the rate of inflation, that's a tongue twister, just to be flat. If you would like to earn more than the rate of inflation, you have to make sure that your retirement accounts are earning more than that. Then there's healthcare. Anyone want to live in a nursing home? Probably not, although they are getting nicer lately. But no one really wants to live in a nursing home. That's not a goal that we have is to, hey, I really want to live in a nursing home. That's usually not the case. Everybody that I've spoken with wants to avoid going into a nursing home if possible. But what we have to remember is that I believe the average in Wayne, Oakland, and Macomb County in Michigan, the average nursing home cost per year is $75,000. So our retirement plans and our estate plans prepared for a $75,000 cost per year to live in a nursing home, a place we don't even really want to be? There's ways that you can cover that risk. There's long-term care insurance. There's life/long-term care hybrid policies available to you. There are things that you can do to cover that long-term care risk so that it doesn't affect your retirement income and it doesn't affect the legacy that you want to leave behind to your children or grandchildren. And finally, longevity is a risk that we need to consider. It's what's really interesting about this group of risks is that if I were to take a poll or a survey on which one of these risks people thought was the most dangerous, the vast majority of people would probably say market risk or inflation. But the reality is longevity is the biggest risk that everyone faces right now. The reason that I believe that is because it amplifies all these other risks. So after this podcast today, I would love for all of you to think about it. Think about your retirement. Think about the future risks when you're creating your retirement plan. And remember that the longer you live, the longer you have to not only deal with these risks, but who else knows what the heck risks can pop up in our country in the next 10, 20, or 30 years. Make sure that you're always investing intentionally. Thank you so much for listening to the Welka Wealth Podcast. I'm your host, Tiffany Welka. God bless you, and God bless your families.
The Welka Wealth Podcast is on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and all your favorite podcasting apps. Subscribe today and never miss an episode. Just look for the Welka Wealth Podcast and keep listening.